Welcome to Living with Sunny. Today, our guest is LaMondre Pough. LaMondre is, I can sum up LaMondre in one sentence that he said in videos of his. He says, I cannot climb a mountain, but I want to move mountains. And I think, I hope I'm not wrong, but that defines him. And there's another thing about LaMondre that I would like to share, and you will see that in our conversation today, is that I want to tell LaMondre, your voice has gravity. Your life has gravity. And when you listen to him, you will know exactly what I mean. Welcome, LaMondre. What a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
My first question, obviously Sunny has got a long list of questions, but your energy on screen is so positive, so happy, so delightful, so smiley. Where does that come from?
Well, it's because I am happy. I am positive. I believe that life is worth living. And when you discover purpose, when you realize that you have a purpose, when you have a reason to take the next breath, that next breath should be a joyous breath. And that's how I've been all my life. And honestly, no matter what challenges we face, no matter what it is that we're going through, I believe that having an attitude where you're thankful, having an attitude of being grateful, that is something that allows me to have hope. That's something that allows me excuse me, to have energy. So there's a quote that I created, and it says, gratitude is the narrative of hope. And when I say that, what I mean is when I think about the things that I have to be grateful for, when I think about the good that I've experienced, no matter what I'm going through now, it informs me to say that, and it can be that way tomorrow. And so that gives me hope for another day. So gratitude is the narrative of hope. And honestly, that's where it comes from.
So I would start with your childhood, growing up. What was it like growing up? Because my understanding is that life threw you a curveball from the very start. You didn't give you time to grow up, didn't give you time to enjoy the childhood as what I have seen for myself. And you suffered from spinal muscular atrophy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I have spinal muscular atrophy.
So tell us about your childhood growing up.
Absolutely. Well, I was born in Columbia, South Carolina, in the United States. And when I was about 18 months old, I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, which at the time of my diagnosis, they said that I would not live to be 5 years old. And if I did live beyond 5 years old, I would be, in their words, a complete vegetable. So the advice that given to my then single teenage mom was to put me in a home and to let me go. And my mom, thank God she's hard-headed. She said, I can't do that. So what can I do? They said, well, what have you been doing? And she said, loving him. And so that's what she did. She took me home and she just continued to love me. And of course, being a child with a disability and growing up as a child with a disability, I didn't know that there was anything that was different about me until people began to point it out.
Somebody very close to me once said, very recently, not two, and more than once, and I won't give away that person, so I won't tell you what that person called me as who I am to them. He says, you are successful, you have so many things going for you, but I hardly see you smile. LaMondre, from the time I've seen you nothing but smile. Mm-hmm. Isn't that ironical? That somebody's telling me, you don't smile enough. Well, you got everything going for you. And I'm saying, I'm going to smile more just looking at you. Because you make me smile.
Here.
I'm going to tell you why, man. I'm going to tell you why I smile all the time. I smile all the time because I've got everything going for me as well. You know, and so when I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, you know, it was a horrible diagnosis to receive. And my mother, who was a single teenage mom, you know, they told her that I would not live to be 5 years old, and if I did live beyond that, in their words, I would be a vegetable. And my mother felt like no matter how much time I have with him, no matter what experiences we have, and it was me, my mom, and my sister, that we're going to be a family and that she's going to instill in us the things that were necessary for us to be good human beings. And she said it didn't matter how much time I had. The fact that we have time, we need to make the best of it. And that's what she did. And so even growing up with a disability and the hardships that we face as a family, because very much like your story, Sonny, we weren't middle class, we were poor. You know, we were poor, and it was me, my mom, and my sister. We lived with my grandparents. So we saw a lot of lean times. We saw times where we had to rely on government assistance. We saw times where we did not have certain things that other people just kind of took for granted. But in all of that, I was still reminded that I was valuable and that I had something to offer. And that we dealt with the things that we could deal with. We changed the things that we could change, but the things that we couldn't, the things that we couldn't impact, the things that we couldn't affect, we learned to just deal with it. And so even when, in your introduction, you said you suffer from spinal muscular atrophy. I have spinal muscular atrophy, but I'm not suffering. It changes how I do things. It changes some of my approach. It changes some of the experiences that I have. And sometimes things in life become a little bit more complicated because of my journey, but it's my journey and I own it. I take responsibility for it. And so while I didn't ask for spinal muscular atrophy, it's mine. I own it. And the truth is, my life is incredible. It's incredible.
Wow.
This is fantastic. Let's move to the next phase of your life, your professional phase of your life, your career. Tell us about it.
Well, so I'm the CEO of Billion Strong, which is a global identity organization that seeks to elevate, to empower, to unite the global community of people with disabilities. And the reason we want to come together and build that is because our goal is to impact a positive disability identity. So often disability is viewed as a negative, as something broken, as something missing. And honestly, you know, a lot of people don't even want to identify or be associated with people with disabilities because of the stigmas attached to it. But the truth is, disability is simply a point of diversity. It is a part of the human experience. And honestly, it's a part of who I am. And that's not intrinsically good, neither is it intrinsically bad. It is just a point of reality. And what we're saying with Billion Strong is that be proud of that. Be proud of that. And because it's an identity organization, identity is a two-way street. It's not only about how the world sees you, but it's also about how you see yourself. And this is what I'm doing now. This is Billion Strong. This is why we exist, and this is what we're going to continue to do. But the way that I got there was really interesting. I knew I've always wanted to do something to help people. I was always very outspoken. I was always, you know, the guy who stood up to bullies. When I saw other people being bullied, I'd stand up to the bully and that thing. That's just who I am. It's just in my DNA. But when I left high school and I went to college, I started looking for things that I could get into. I became student body president at the college that I was at, but I still wanted something else to do. So I started volunteering at an independent living center, which was an organization in South Carolina that basically helps people with disabilities to live their lives as independently as they chose to. And I started volunteering there. Well, during that time is when I started the speaking. That's when I started training. That's when I started advocacy. and really working to affect positive change. Well, I loved it. But the things that I was teaching to people with disabilities and to the community, I recognized that it was also good for everyone else. Everyone needed to learn how to be more independent. Everyone needed to learn how to speak up for what their needs were. Everyone needed to learn what was the best route for them to take in order to live a fulfilling life. So I became an entrepreneur and I started offering that to the general community. Um, then after that, I went into sales because, as an entrepreneur, sometimes there's really good things and sometimes it's kind of lean. Sometimes things are tough. And at the time I was married, and I told my wife at that time, if my business was not where I wanted it to be by a certain time, that I would go and get a regular job. Um, and at that time, it was not. So that's what I did. I went to work for a retailer, a big box retailer, and as a computer salesman. And I sold computers, and it was so amazing because you don't know how many times people came into the store, they would find me, and when they saw me, they would say, "How did you get this job here? Was it a special program? What was it? Why are you working here?" And my whole thinking was, because I need to eat. That's why I'm working here. And what the special program I did was I filled out a job application and I came and interviewed. And so it would just shock people. But also while I was there as an entrepreneur, those tendencies, those urges still continued to do something different, to see what problem existed and how could I solve this problem. And while I was there, I came up with an access program. The design of the access program was to make the retail experience more accessible and more pleasant, particularly for customers with disabilities and the aging community. And as I started working on it and it started to expand, I realized that, hey, we need to do this for the employees as well. And now, mind you, I'm just a computer salesman in the store. Well, my concept and my work made it all the way up to corporate. And this is an international organization. It made it all the way up to corporate. And it wasn't just my efforts, it wasn't just my work. But the year after that, the organization won the New Freedom Initiative, which is an award given by the White House that really focuses on accessibility and work that's being done to progress marginalized communities. And of course, when that happened, I'm still a computer salesman working in the local store there. I was able to speak at a conference. I met an incredible friend, Deborah Rue, who was at the time the CEO of a company called Tech Access. And Tech Access was a company that really focused on accessibility in terms of the digital domain. And she heard me speak. And after I got off stage, before I walked off the stage, she said, "Hey, stay on the stage. I want you to speak with me." And I'm thinking, I don't know this lady. I don't know her presentation. I don't know anything about this. But I stayed. And from that point on, we developed an incredible friendship. And then I became the business development manager for Tech Access. Moved over to VP of marketing and sales there. And then in 2008, of course, 2008, that's when the Great Recession happened, and had to downsize the company, and I had to go on and do some other things. But then started doing my entrepreneur thing again, started doing really well with that. Then a few years ago, Deborah asked me to rejoin her team at her new company, which is Rue Global. And Rue Global really is a company that helps organizations and corporate entities really improve their accessibility posture and their disability inclusion posture. And I joined the team, and now I'm the CEO of Billion Strong. So that has been my career path all the way through it. So entrepreneur, worked in some corporate environments, but this is it.
The way I look at this, and then especially I'm listening to you, I realize that humanity, people all over the world, they have some condition or the other that they live with. Some is visible, some is not visible.
Right.
I live with conditions, I live with issues, but they might not be visible to the normal person, right?
Right.
And the question is, even though we made progress in the narrative about disability, and people who have disabilities. I think the narrative has to change a lot more. We're saying we all have conditions. Some are born with it, some come and go, some condition disappears, another condition appears, such as life. And therefore, why is one human being different from another when we all have conditions? They might not be
Absolutely.
visible to you. And therefore,
Absolutely.
and therefore, why should somebody with a visible disability be treated any more different from any one of us who all of us suffer? Who are we to say we are perfect? Because none of
Right.
us are. We are
Right.
fundamentally flawed individuals, especially as we grow up, given all the pressures we face in school, in college, in life, in the careers, people's biases, and so on and so forth. Maybe it's time to fundamentally change the narrative of looking at people, whether they have a disability, visible or not visible, or whatever it is. I think it's time to make that call to the
Oh,
world.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that is so powerful, Sonny, and I'm so glad you said that because, as you said, we all have our flaws, but the flaws are the things that make us perfectly who we are.
Yes.
Yes.
It is that the flaws that make us perfect. It's those flaws that make us unique. It is that flaw that really says, I am human, that I
That's right.
am not some entity that's floating through this life untouched, unscarred, unblemished. It is a part of our experience. And so often, what happens, particularly when we start talking about the disability community, people really want to separate this community out. But understand this, disability is the only minority group that anyone can join at any time, whether it be through illness, accident, or simply through the process of aging. I like to tell people, keep on living, baby. And you're going to experience disability in some way, shape, or form. But guess what? That's not a problem. That's
Right.
not a negative. That is just a reality of life. And the other piece that I think is so important is that so often when we talk about disability and we encounter people with disabilities, we forget that there's so many other elements about that person that disability is not the only thing that defines them. Now I often hear people say, I'm not defined by my disability. I understand what they mean by that, but I need you to hear me on this. My disability is not the defining point of who I am, but it is certainly a part of my experience. And because it's a part of my experience, it has some defining power in my experience. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, it's quite simple. Yes, I'm a person with a disability, but I'm also a black man who was raised in South Carolina, who is heterosexual, and who has gone through a divorce, who has gone through a number of different challenges. All of those things combined together make me who I am. I'm also very sexy. And so that's a part of my definition as well. And I'm totally joking on that part, but the truth is, all of these things make me who I am. And to deny me of any of that is to deny me of my own personhood. And so, in the conversation of disability, we can't just say, oh, that's a person with Down syndrome, so that is the totality of who they are, and that's the totality of their experience. There are so many intersections that make up who we are. There's so many different elements that make up who we are that in order for us to really realize our potential, in order for us to have this holistic wellness and a holistic lifestyle, we have to recognize all of it. And it all has to be seen as valuable. It all has to be seen as worth it. For years, we have been caught in what I like to call an inclusion illusion, where we talk about being inclusive, where we tout our efforts and all of these kinds of things. In other words, we check the box. But my question is, are we really valuing the person that box supposedly represents? Are we creating environments where people can actually have a sense of belonging? So we have to focus on economic empowerment as it relates to workplace and creating inclusive environments. Now, in terms of what we need as a society as a whole, first of all, we have to realize things have changed dramatically. And you know the focus has shifted in a good area to sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, you have to remember that we're not just talking about environment, although that's a part of it, but we're also talking about society as a whole, and we're also talking about our economy as well. And so the goal is to create a sustainability in every area of our existence, environmental, socially, and economically. You cannot do that if everyone doesn't have a seat and a voice at the table. You can't have true sustainability without people with disabilities being at the table. You can't have true sustainability without really engaging in various communities that so often have been marginalized and who have said, oh, no, 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 well, we can just do that for them and we'll move on. That's not sustainable. That's not how we make progress. And I actually heard something that you said, Tony, and you talked about the responsibility of corporations to solve problems. This is why corporations exist. This is why they're good at it. And the ones that are not, as you said, they fade away. And the thing that I thought about when I heard that was that's what all of this is about. It's about us saying we're responsible. It's on us. How do we effectively solve these problems? And it's not that you're looking at solving every problem as a corporation. It's not that you're looking at solving every problem as an individual or as an educational institution or as a government. But what it is that you find a problem that you can solve, even if that's just solving it in your little part of the world. But you do that effectively and you do it consistently. That's how you change the world, because it's the aggregate of all of our efforts coming together to change the world. So what do we need at Billion Strong? Well, one of the first things we need is a commitment to the understanding of what Billion Strong is and what it represents and why it exists. Billion Strong exists to create positive change in the world, to help build a positive disability identity, both how the world sees people with disabilities and how people with disabilities see themselves. Our goal is to unite the community of people with disability. 1.3 billion people around the world have some form of disability, and I promise you that's a conservative number because many people don't want to identify as a person with a disability. So we want to come together again to affect positive change. We need you to join the movement that when people hear and see the word disability, that they understand right away, even though the word means that not abled. At least that's essentially what the word means. The truth is, it is what is wrapped around that word, and what is wrapped around that word for so many are negative connotations, are things that hold people back. And this is why I want to reclaim the word and say, wait a minute. Forget what you thought. Forget what you heard. Now, I know we live in a time where people can see something and come and see that it's true, see exactly what it is and still deny it. But you know what? We have to still present it. We still have to share it. We still have to show it.
Like I said in the beginning of our conversation, LaMondre, your voice has gravity, your life has gravity. And so when you say, I cannot climb a mountain, but I want to move mountains, my dear sir, you are moving mountains. And it's very evident from our conversation that you are. And so, LaMondre, you are a role model. You are a role model of holistic well-being.
Thank you, and so are you. Again, we're disconnecting, but I feel kindred. I feel like Me, you, and Thomas, I feel like we're brothers. You know that we're
Hey,
connected in that, and I feel like I've known you all for years. It's this is beautiful, and thank you for this platform. Thank you for being willing to speak out, because obviously you all don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. This is not a need where you're trying to feed your family by it or anything like that. But you still see the importance of offering what you got. And so thank you. And thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
LaMondre Pough, my guest at Living with Sunny, with Thomas and I, thank you once again.